The sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the city in hues of amber and crimson. A sleek black car sped through the busy streets, weaving through traffic as if it were a creature trying to escape the confines of its urban jungle. Behind the wheel sat Victor Langston, a self-made millionaire whose name echoed through the corridors of boardrooms and skyscrapers. Tonight, however, his mind wasn't on deals or dividends. He was late for a gala that demanded his presence, an event designed to celebrate his achievements and further cement his reputation. Victor prided himself on control of his life, his empire, his time. But control is an illusion, a lesson he learned in a single instant when a delivery truck swerved unexpectedly into his lane. The screech of tires, the crumpling of metal, and the cacophony of horns heralded the abrupt end to Victor's journey. His car spun and collided with the sidewalk, a jagged shard of glass slicing across his forehead. Dazed and bleeding, Victor struggled to free himself from the crumpled luxury vehicle. Passers-by stared, some pulling out their phones to record, others walking on as if the scene were nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience. But one figure moved with purpose. A woman, clad in layers of tattered clothing, pushed through the gathering crowd. Her face bore the marks of hardship, her hands calloused from years of toil. "Sir, hold on," she called, her voice steady despite the urgency. Without hesitation, she pried open the door, her strength belying her frail appearance. Victor tried to speak, but his words were garbled. The woman assessed his condition quickly, her weathered fingers pressing a cloth against his wound to stem the bleeding. "You're going to be fine," she murmured, as much to herself as to him. "But we need to get you out of here." Within moments, she flagged down a passing taxi and, with the driver's reluctant assistance, helped Victor into the back seat. As the car sped toward the nearest hospital, she remained by his side, her presence a strange comfort in the chaos. Victor drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments of her words. "Stay with me. Don't close your eyes. Help's on the way." Her voice was soothing, almost maternal, and for the first time in years, Victor felt an odd sense of vulnerability. At the hospital, the woman stayed just long enough to ensure he was in capable hands. When Victor finally regained full consciousness hours later, she was gone, leaving behind only the faintest memory of her kindness. Days later, as Victor recovered, he found himself haunted by the face of the woman who had saved him. His assistant had no difficulty identifying her. Cameras from nearby shops had captured her, a familiar figure in the neighborhood, a beggar named Rosa who frequented the streets near Victor's office building. Victor's curiosity was piqued, but it was more than that. The man who had built his empire on cold logic and shrewd decisions felt something stir within him, a sense of responsibility, perhaps even gratitude. He instructed his assistant to locate Rosa and invite her to his office. When Rosa was finally brought before him, she appeared hesitant and guarded. Her clothes were the same, though slightly cleaner, and her eyes flickered with a mix of wariness and curiosity. "Do you remember me?" Victor asked, his voice softer than usual. "How could I forget?" Rosa replied. "You were bleeding in the street." Victor smiled faintly. "You saved my life." "I did what anyone would have done," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely believe it. "Not everyone would," Victor countered. "And for that, I owe you. Tell me, Rosa, what do you need? Money? A place to stay? A job?" Rosa hesitated, her pride warring with her circumstances. "I'm not looking for charity," she said firmly. "But a job would be nice." Victor nodded. "Then a job it is." Rosa's arrival at Langston Enterprises was met with skepticism. The office was a realm of tailored suits and polished shoes, where whispers traveled faster than emails. Her presence, a woman of no status, no education, and no connections, was an anomaly. Victor, however, paid no mind to the murmurs. He assigned her to the mailroom, a humble position but one he knew she could handle. Rosa, for her part, threw herself into the work with a determination that surprised even her. The same streets that had hardened her had also taught her resilience, and she approached every task with an unwavering focus. But it wasn't long before Rosa's past caught up with her. One afternoon, Victor called her into his office, his expression unreadable. He slid a file across the desk toward her. "I asked my team to run a background check," he said. I needed to understand who I was entrusting my company to. Rosa's hands trembled as she opened the file. Inside was a summary of her life, a trail of debts, a stint in prison for petty theft, and a history of homelessness. I'm not proud of it, Rosa said quietly, her voice laced with shame. But I've paid my dues. Victor studied her for a long moment before speaking. What happened to you, Rosa? How did you end up on the streets? Rosa's gaze dropped to her lap. Life happened, she said simply. Bad choices. Bad luck. People I trusted who let me down. And before I knew it, I was invisible. Victor leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Her story resonated with him in ways he hadn't expected. He saw in her a reflection of himself, of the man he might have been had fortune not smiled upon him. And he realized that perhaps Rosa's greatest asset wasn't her ability to deliver mail, but the strength that had carried her through a life most people couldn't imagine. Victor sat back, allowing Rosa's words to settle in the air like a delicate balance on the edge of a scale. Her story was raw and unfiltered, far removed from the polished tales of triumph he usually encountered in his world of wealth and power. He was struck by her humility, by the quiet strength in her voice as she owned her past without excuses. Rosa, he began carefully, I didn't bring you here to dredge up painful memories. I wanted to understand, to see the person behind the act of kindness that saved me. You've lived through things most people in this building couldn't imagine. That resilience, it's remarkable. Rosa blinked, surprised. She had expected judgment, perhaps even pity, but not admiration. Thank you, she said softly. I just want a chance to move forward. Victor nodded slowly. You'll have it, he said. But I think there's more to you than this job. I want to see where your talents lie. Let's start with something different. What do you mean? Rosa asked cautiously. Victor smiled. You'll remain in the mailroom for now, but I'm giving you a new assignment. I want you to shadow different departments: finance, operations, marketing. Learn as much as you can about how this company runs. Consider it an education. Rosa's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely, Victor replied. I have a feeling you can handle it. And if you ever feel out of your depth, just let me know. Rosa hesitated, overwhelmed by the offer. Why are you doing this for me? Victor met her gaze, his expression earnest. Because everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their story. And maybe because I owe you more than I can ever repay. Rosa's first few weeks in her new role were a whirlwind. She spent her mornings sorting and delivering mail, her afternoons shadowing department heads, and her evenings poring over notes and reports. The work was challenging, often intimidating, but Rosa approached it with the same grit that had seen her through the darkest days of her life. In the finance department, she learned the art of balancing budgets and analyzing profit margins. In marketing, she discovered the importance of storytelling and branding. And in operations, she saw firsthand the meticulous planning required to keep a company running smoothly. Each day brought new lessons, and though she often doubted herself, she refused to give up. Victor, true to his word, kept a watchful eye on her progress. He was impressed by her dedication, by the way she absorbed knowledge like a sponge and asked thoughtful questions. Slowly, she began to earn the respect of her colleagues. Even the whispers that had once followed her through the halls began to fade. But Rosa's journey wasn't without its challenges. One afternoon, as she worked on a report in the marketing office, she overheard two employees discussing her. "Can you believe Victor hired her?" one of them said, his tone dripping with disdain. "A beggar, of all people. She must have something on him," the other replied. "There's no other explanation." Rosa's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had faced worse than gossip, and she wasn't about to let it derail her. Instead, she channeled her frustration into her work, determined to prove her worth. Weeks turned into months, and Rosa's transformation was undeniable. She no longer walked the halls with her head down. She held it high, her confidence growing with each passing day. Victor noticed the change and decided it was time for the next step. One evening, he called Rosa into his office. "You've done well," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Better than I expected, to be honest." "Thank you," Rosa said, a mix of pride and gratitude in her voice. "But now I have a new challenge for you," Victor continued. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. "I want you to lead this project. It's a small one, but it's important." Rosa opened the folder and scanned its contents. It was a proposal for a community outreach initiative, aimed at providing job training and support for underprivileged individuals. Her breath caught as she realized the significance of the project. This is incredible," she said, her voice trembling. "But why me?" "Because you understand what it means to start from nothing," Victor replied. "You know what these people are going through. I can't think of anyone better to lead this." Rosa looked up at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'll do my best," she said. "I know you will," Victor said with a smile. As Rosa dived into the project, she found herself drawing on her own experiences in ways she hadn't expected. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with local organizations, designing training programs, and advocating for resources. The project became more than just a job. It became a mission, a chance to give others the opportunity she had been given. But not everyone was supportive. Some within the company questioned Victor's decision to entrust such an important initiative to someone with no formal education or experience. Even Rosa herself had moments of doubt, but Victor's unwavering belief in her kept her going. One night, as she worked late in the office, Rosa received an unexpected visitor. Victor appeared at her desk, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here?" he asked, setting 1 cup in front of her. "I wanted to finish this proposal," Rosa replied, gesturing to the stack of papers in front of her. "The deadline's tomorrow." Victor nodded, impressed. "You've done an incredible job," he said. "But don't forget to take care of yourself. You're no good to anyone if you're burned out." Rosa smiled, touched by his concern. "I'll remember that," she said. As Victor left, Rosa stared after him, a sense of gratitude washing over her. She had come so far, but she knew her journey was far from over. And she was determined to make the most of every opportunity that lay ahead. The next morning, Rosa stood at the head of the conference room, presenting her proposal to a room filled with executives. Her heart pounded as she faced the skeptical eyes of seasoned professionals, many of whom had doubted her from the start. But as she began to speak, her nerves gave way to determination. "This initiative isn't just about charity," Rosa said, her voice steady and clear. "It's about creating opportunities. Opportunities that can transform lives and, in turn, strengthen our community. When we invest in people, we invest in our future." As she laid out the details of the program, her passion shone through. She spoke from the heart, drawing on her own experiences to illustrate the potential impact of the project. By the time she finished, the room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Victor was the first to break the silence. "Thank you, Rosa," he said, his voice filled with pride. "This is exactly the kind of leadership we need. I fully support this initiative." One by one, the other executives began to nod in agreement. Rosa felt a surge of relief and accomplishment as they voted unanimously to move forward with the project. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Rosa poured her energy into launching the initiative, collaborating with local nonprofits, and recruiting participants for the program. She met men and women whose stories mirrored her own, individuals who had been overlooked and underestimated but who were eager for a chance to prove themselves. The first training session was held in a modest community center, where a group of 20 participants gathered to learn skills ranging from resume writing to financial literacy. Rosa watched as they listened intently, their faces filled with hope. She saw herself in their eyes and felt a deep sense of purpose. One participant, a young mother named Elena, caught Rosa's attention. Elena had lost her job during a company layoff and had been struggling to support her 2 children ever since. Despite her challenges, she exuded a quiet determination that reminded Rosa of her own journey. "I just want to provide a better life for my kids," Elena confided to Rosa one afternoon. "They deserve more than this." "You're already doing something incredible by being here," Rosa replied. "Keep pushing forward. You're stronger than you realize." As the initiative gained momentum, it began to attract attention. Local media outlets covered the program, highlighting its success and the impact it was having on the community. Rosa found herself thrust into the spotlight, a role she never could have imagined for herself. But with recognition came scrutiny. One article questioned whether Rosa's background made her suitable to lead such a high-profile project. A former beggar turned executive. Can she handle the pressure? The headline read. Rosa was shaken but refused to let the criticism derail her. She turned to Victor for guidance, seeking his advice on how to navigate the challenges of her newfound position. People will always have their opinions, Victor said. But the only opinion that truly matters is your own. You've earned your place here, Rosa. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. His words bolstered her resolve, and Rosa continued to lead the initiative with unwavering dedication. Over time, the results spoke for themselves. Participants secured jobs, started businesses, and rebuilt their lives, all thanks to the opportunities the program provided. One evening, as Rosa reviewed the latest progress reports in her office, Victor appeared in the doorway. "How's it going?" he asked, stepping inside. "Better than I could have hoped," Rosa replied, gesturing to the stack of papers in front of her. "The participants are thriving, and the community response has been incredible." Victor smiled. "I knew you'd make this a success." Rosa looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You gave me a chance when no one else would." "You earned it," Victor said simply. "And you've more than repaid the favor." Rosa felt a lump rise in her throat as she considered how far she had come. "Victor," she began hesitantly, "why did you believe in me? Why did you take a risk on someone like me?" Victor's gaze softened. "Because you reminded me of myself," he admitted. "I may not have been on the streets, but I know what it's like to feel invisible, to fight for a place in a world that doesn't think you belong. And I saw something in you. Something extraordinary." Rosa was silent for a moment, overwhelmed by his words. Finally, she said, "Thank you, for everything." Victor nodded, his expression resolute. "This is just the beginning, Rosa. You've proven what you're capable of, and I have a feeling you're destined for even greater things." As Rosa walked home that night, the city lights seemed brighter, the world more alive. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the trials, the struggles, and the people who had helped her along the way. And she realized that her story was no longer just her own. It was a testament to the power of resilience, kindness, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. But as she turned the corner toward her modest apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected was on the horizon, something that would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Her journey was far from over.